The Patterson Foundation
strengthens people, organizations, and communities by focusing on issues that address mutual aspirations,
foster wide participation, and encourage learning and sharing.
Hello, welcome to Beyond the Blog, the Patterson Foundation's podcast series that there's stories to be shared to educate and engage our viewers or our listeners, whichever mode people are connecting with us. The purpose of today's Beyond the Blog podcast is actually to create a bit of a posterity story where we want to capture how the Patterson Foundation decided to invest in the Bay Park, but then also how the Bay Park has come to life over the last 10 years. And I am thrilled that I am with the founding CEO, A.G. Lafley, who he is the paid help at the Bayfront Conservancy, but he is astonishingly at a wage level of $1 per year, demonstrating how one man will say, this has to happen and I want to be part of this. So I'm going to go into first of all, say welcome, AG.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Deborah.
All right, and actually, AG and I have worked together over the last 10 years, so we love talking, and we're going to not have a script. We're just going to see how it flows as we talk together.
Look forward to.
I'm going to take advantage of being the host today, though, just to give a little bit of historical context before you arrived on the scene. More than 10 years ago, there were 3 individuals in our community, Virginia Haley, John Thaxton, and Michael Clubber, who decided something needed to happen with that Bayfront property. So they went out and talked to more than 200 community groups and got more than 200 signatures saying something must happen. Those 3 individuals, in concert with community groups, called themselves Bayfront 2020, which here we are in 2025. But anyway, so they created Bayfront 2020. On their own, they raised $150,000 from community because they wanted to hire expertise that would help them develop guiding principles. Because this 53 acres that's owned by the city of Sarasota had more than enough master plans that were developed that sat on the shelf. And they wanted to be sure this time, could it be different? Could something actually happen? So again, they toiled, they hired a firm, they developed guiding principles. They went to the city commission and they said, hello, City Commission, we have guiding principles. This has come from community. Would you allow us to move forward to think about what could happen at this bay front of 53 acres? And the county said, sure. And after that, and the City Commission said, sure, go ahead. After the City Commission meeting, the Patterson Foundation, of which I'm privileged to lead, we had been watching this whole Bayfront 2020 endeavor going on, and we were intrigued that community was so, yes, let's do it with guiding principles. So I did reach out to Michael Clubber, and I said, might we have a conversation about the Bayfront 2020? And we met, and I said, so what's going to happen now? And he said, not sure. I said, well, what if the Patterson Foundation were to offer technical assistance to help a mighty group of volunteers figure out what kind of a structure should we have, what kind of a governance, are we in the sunshine, are we not in the sunshine, what should be the next steps, and would you like that facilitation? That'd be a great idea. So with that, the Patterson Foundation contracted with a consultant to help this group of mighty volunteers to figure out what's next. And out of that coming of what's next emerged we have to form a board and we need to recruit board members, which is when they did reach out to Mr. A.G. Lafley and said, might you come on board? So I'm going to put you on the spot now of, that was Debra Jacobs' perception of the evolution at that point. Now I'd like to hear your perception of the evolution to that point.
Not all that different, but not nearly as detailed and nuanced. When Bayfront 2020 started their work, I was back at P&G in Cincinnati doing my second tour as chairman and CEO, and literally flying out of town every Sunday night and flying back on Friday night. And Diana, my partner and spouse, had also been watching, as you were, what was going on with Bayfront 2020. And she had been bemoaning the condition of the 53 acres, what a hodgepodge it was, how it had never really been developed as a whole, the parts and pieces that didn't go together, all of that. And so she was kind of keeping me informed of the community effort. But I honestly didn't think too much of it. I was focused 110% on getting the job I was rehired to do done. In the summer of 2016, Diana and I were in Indianapolis. Her mother was having, ironically, a total knee replacement. I had finally retired from P&G in June, end of June, and I got a cold call from one of the steering team members. And he asked me if I'd be interested in learning more about this effort. And I said, jeepers creepers, I hadn't been retired for 30 days. I need to think about it. And by the way, we're fully occupied here in Indianapolis. Could I get back to you? Which I did in about 60 days. And to complete the story, Michael Saunders, whom I'd met and socialized a couple of times with through other friends in town, had connected with me and was, in her inimitable way and style, encouraging me to get involved. And then I came back. We got back in town for good, I want to say in September, October of 2016. And I said, why not? And I think we convened for the first time at Michael's on East in November.
So this is testimony to things don't happen overnight. People actually put a lot of good thought into why would I do this? Does it fit my lifestyle? Should I do it? And what's the bigger vision? So very exciting. So now I love this, my perception, your perception, to see how it all comes together. So again, the technical assistance that the Patterson Foundation was actually a human. It was Richard Hayes, who was an excellent leader in corporate life, but also in nonprofit life. So he did help with the bylaws, the recruiting, the board structure, whatever. But then it was the board's responsibility to carry it forward.
I'm not exactly sure who coined the name.
Okay.
We were called the Sarasota Bayfront Planning Organization.
Oh, yes, the SBPO. Yes,
right,
I remember that.
You may recall that part of the City Commission's acceptance, support for the next step was to make sure that the then city manager, Tom Barwin, was one of the committee members. In other words, the city wanted in from the earliest planning stages.
Well, and this undergirds the whole concept of the public-private partnership. Okay, this was indeed a partnership embedded from the beginning.
It was implied for sure.
Yeah. So recollection is that the governing board put together a $2 million budget of what it would take to operate as the Bayfront Planning Organization. And one of the goals in there is to hire the ultimate master planning organization to help carry this forward. And I remember the $2 million budget. So at that time, the Patterson Foundation, again, it took the risk of this is air, this is an idea, but what is possible? And that's where the Patterson Foundation is always looking at what is possible with excellence, accountability, and integrity. So we offered to the Bayfront Planning Organization a $100,000 downstroke, showing good faith. And then every time the team raised $1 million, we would kick in again another 100, which our exposure could be up to $300,000. And if I'm recalling correctly, you all were quite successful.
We earned your $300,000.
Okay, so
Yes,
do you just want to talk about how easy, hard is it to raise money for a brand new startup organization that is still just an idea?
It's not easy. I guess the first thing I should say is the city negotiated a very good deal from the beginning. If you think about it, Bayfront 2020 was funded exclusively from private gifts, and their entire planning effort was being funded privately. So smart negotiation on the part of the city. I have to give credit where credit's due here. Veronica Brady had basically went knocking on doors. But I have to say the leadership of the Patterson Foundation, the money down, and the challenge, if and when we could raise the next 2 tranches of money, were incredibly important. And when everything was said and done, I don't believe we would have signed on 5 of the major foundations in this area if the Patterson Foundation hadn't taken the lead. And I'm certain of this number, $600,000 of the 2.1 to 2 million ultimately raised actually came from the foundations. And that was incredibly important because that was our first stop. And in some cases we got commitments, and in some cases we got, we'll think about it, but we didn't even get turned down. And once we had those, then you can sort of turn your attention to potential philanthropists, interested individuals, interested businesses that may want to come on board. And we were very fortunate to attract enough of them that were willing to make sizable gifts, $50,000, $100,000 gifts. And I believe we got to about 1.8 with, basically 1/3 from the foundations, 2/3 from individual donors and businesses willing to put in 150, and then we filled it out with smaller gifts. But it's not easy. It takes a courageous first mover. It takes a respected first mover. And of course, you mentioned this earlier. It's hard to sell an idea. We didn't even have a single drawing on a page because what they were funding was a planning effort that involved us vetting and gathering together the resources that we would need to gather together to fulfill our 3 commitments to the city, which were propose a master plan for the site, propose a form of governance that would work, and be sustainable for the site, and propose a financial strategy and plan that would give us some confidence that we could ever afford to do this master plan.
I want to weave in here the Patterson Foundation. We are uber focused on our guiding principles and our values. And one of the linkages about why this organization, I think guiding principles have been the DNA in everything that you have used and continue to bring forth. Could you just talk a little bit about how you as the leader and how the organization uses your guiding principles?
I wouldn't have signed on without the guiding principles. I was very fortunate. I've been very fortunate in my life to work mostly for organizations that are highly principled. They have purpose, they have strong values, and they have principles that they live by. 6 years in the Navy. Clear purpose, clear mission, very clear about their values and principles. The company I worked for, not quite 200 years old, run by the family for the first 100 years. The family essentially established the purpose, the values, and then the principles were derived from the values. So, especially in this chapter of my life, I can choose to work on anything I want to work on. So I wanted to work on something that I had passion for the purpose. I would say passion for the possibility, passion for the purpose, total commitment to the guiding principles. And I have to tell you, the biggest risk I took is when I walked into that room in November, I didn't know a single soul in that room. I hadn't met Virginia. I hadn't met John. I hadn't met Michael. I hadn't met Tom Barwin. Barely knew who he was from reading the newspaper. And I certainly hadn't met any of the other 8 individuals who had also volunteered, for this committee. So, pretty big risk.
But, okay, informed risk.
Informed
One
risk.
thing I would like our listeners, viewers to understand about Mr. Lafley here is does his homework. I can remember your due diligence where you went back to you read every previous master plan. You read the notes, the Post-it notes from community conversations. So you did not walk in here blindly uninformed. You built a foundation of understanding the past to tie to the vision of the future.
That is true.
Could you take a second? I think one of the brilliant, there were every brilliant along the way, but one of them, I think the selection of the master planning group was a brilliant process and truly helped undergird everything that happened going forward. So could you give your perspective on the process that you used to select the master planning group?
I will. I think you touched on an important point, and it's one that we try to live still today. I majored in history. I kind of worked my way through mathematics, which got too theoretical. I tried literature, which was fun, but gosh, what am I going to do with that? I spent a year in France, and I ended up cramming my senior year to graduate in history. But I think it's Soroyan, I'm relatively positive, it's Soroyan who said something to the effect that if we don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. So yes, I did read all of those master plans. Okay, starting with the one from the 1920s, all right? And yes, I did, do my homework. But I just wanted, it wasn't so much to make the final decision. I made that on my gut. It was more to understand what had happened before in this city and community of Sarasota and what might we need to do differently, to help this one get off the ground. And your question about the group, I think is relevant and important in that regard. I didn't select my colleagues, right? They were selected, I don't know, by some committee, right? And Richard was part of that. He was facilitating that. But I think it was a serendipitous cross-section of this community. People from different walks of life, different professions, with different experiences, different viewpoints, but importantly, virtually all committed to Sarasota. Some were born and raised here. Some came here in their 20s. Some didn't come here until, we've been here on and off for 27 years now, so I didn't show up until I was in my 50s. But we all were committed to Sarasota. And we were committed to enabling the community to continue to grow, develop, and get better. And we were committed to enabling and empowering a higher quality of life. So I think that's like super important, right? And we invested a fair amount of time, especially in the first 6 months. I thought this was important. Some in our group were getting a little impatient, but Richard, God bless him, would recall this. We spent time on team building activities. We spent time getting to know each other as individuals. As long as you're comfortable with, sharing a bit about who you are and why you're here and what your aspirations and expectations are, right? And then I think the other thing that kind of worked out, I always joke the only reason I was elected chair is I went to the men's room when they had the vote, but it was pretty close to that.
Yeah.
But I think that the way we organized, you know, Kathy Layton was a very important leader in the group. Jennifer Compton was a very important leader in the group. Rob Lane was an important leader in the group. And I don't want to mention everybody because I'll leave somebody out, but people sort of migrated to areas where they felt comfortable and they had capability and experience and they were willing to give more of their energy and time. Because this, I think the biggest thing that surprised us all is I think we thought we were going to meet once a quarter or maybe once every other month, and it ended up being a major investment of energy and effort.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when we think about tenets of why the Patterson Foundation came on board, it came from community. The SBPO embraced we must always have public input. So as the master plan team came on, it wasn't that the board worked in isolation to develop a plan.
No, not at all. And you are right. Fortunately, Virginia Haley's secretary, God bless her, had saved all of the stickies and posters from the meetings that they had. And the facilitator you mentioned was an outfit called HRNA Advisors out of New York. I had actually worked with the founder of HRNA Advisors 23 years ago when we were starting a similar, not identical process in Cincinnati. And we both believe deeply you've got to start in the neighborhoods, you've got to start in the community, you've got to run a listening tour and an observation tour. And of course, I came from a company that lived or died based on how well we understood our customer. So that was, you know, that was just always a touchstone for me. You know, find out what she wants, find out what he wants, find out what they want, and then think about it. How can we give them, you know, that through our strategy, through our plan, through our execution. Lots of initiatives like this start out there. They put the plan together, the plan gets approved, and it stops. And as Diana reported, as we always report, to our board and to our executive committee, with the Bay, with Bay Park Conservancy, it's never ending. Everyone who comes to a program at the park receives an instant survey afterwards. You know, the completion rate varies all over the place, but we want to know. We want to get the feedback. Everybody on our team, when they're in the park, if they meet somebody, they want to know. How's your day going? How's your experience, right? I remind our team that dissatisfaction and complaints are gifts because they tell us where we have flaws, right? They tell us what we can do better. As much as we're happy as can be that whatever the numbers are, 93 to 97% of people who come to a program rate the park and the program excellent or very good. I want to know, you know, I always drive my team crazy. Could you please tell me about the 3% and 7%? I just need to know where we have some warts, right, that we've got to work on. But the number of touches now are in the millions.
Yeah.
And they're not just the in-person things that we do in the neighborhoods and the condo associations, downtown, with any group that wants to meet with us, we'll meet with them. Any individual that walks in, we'll listen to them. But we've now developed such breadth in social media. We have a newsletter that reaches 16 or 17,000 people. Every Saturday morning, we get an open rate of 55 to 60%. I've worked, that's unheard of.
Right.
It's an unheard of open rate. Our website attracts an amazing amount of traffic. Now, you have to be careful, right? Because a lot of people are just checking in on what's on the calendar for today, when's the next event, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it doesn't get used. We're always thinking about how to design it and redesign it so we can improve its usability. But the main point I want to make is touching your customer, understanding the park guest so well that you know their unarticulated needs in addition to the needs and comments and complaints they can articulate. That's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal.
So one of the reasons why the Patterson Foundation believed in the vision was because it was going to be a park for all ages, a park for all, and a place people could participate without having to buy a ticket. And that was a unique alignment for the two of us. So, so that's a factoid that we'll weave into future conversation as we talk now. I want to move to 53 acres. The SBPO decided to focus on the first 10, developing, demonstrate, let's get something going. And you bizarrely decided to raise the money for the first 10 acres through philanthropy, which again, it's a park. Government does parks. What's this philanthropy thing? So why were you so bold to take that approach?
All true. All clear decisions that we made and mostly agreed to, and I believe incredibly important. Your first question was 10 acres. You know, the first tranche, the first piece of park was 10 acres, 20% of the 53 plus acres that eventually we will develop. If you actually go back and think about it, we walked through 3 steps. We were hoping to begin phase 1 and COVID hit.
Yes.
So what we actually did is we went out and did a $250,000 to $500,000 development at the Blue Pagoda in the what's called the Fountain Garden area now, formerly Tuttle's Polluted Puddle, and in the Sarasota Garden Club area. And we did it because we just wanted to get something going. We wanted to see what our team could do. And that was this little corner that people would see, right? It was at an intersection of North Tamiami Trail and Boulevard of the Arts. And it was important. It wasn't much, but it was a glimpse of what was coming. Then we decided we'd raise some money, some of which was directed to environmental. And we had a polluted bayou to deal with, and we had a mangrove that hadn't been cared for properly for a long time. So we decided to do a second project. This was a $5 million project, and we called it the Mangrove Bayou Walkway. I think you were there to help us cut the ribbon with others, and we did that. And we did that as sort of the appetizer, the real appetizer in 2021 for opening the park in 2022. And then we took on the $25 million phase 1 piece. When we were done, we'd spend a bit over $30 million. But I think I'm a big believer in one step at a time. I'm a big believer that we are a learning laboratory. I personally have learned so much from getting involved with this initiative. I've been some days surprised, some days in awe of how much I'm learning. And I think it's incredibly important to be, in addition to and in touch with the community and customer and park guest, institution, we need to be a learning institution, perpetually learning. Now let's come to the how we fund it. Eventually, as you may recall, in the financial strategy we gave to the city, we said these, when they're successful, they turn out to be funded about 50-50. Not precisely 50-50, but in the end, $200 million project. That's a big project for private philanthropy to take on in a city of this size. It's a big project for the city of Sarasota to take on in a city of this size, which leads to another point that we may come back to. We worked from the beginning to get to know the county and to encourage the county to come on board, which we were able to do, very important, even though the park was in the city. And we've made the point over and over again. Most recently I did when I was in front of the county commission in December or January, how many people from the county actually come to the park and use the park, right? And I think they understand that, and I think that's important to them, and they see it as a city-county park and even a regional park. But coming back to the funding, again, in Patterson Foundation, we wouldn't have got there without Patterson Foundation, but I felt that one reason I was doing it step by step is I could fund it in pieces. I could raise the 500,000. I could raise the 5 million. When we had to go after the 25 million, as you know, I came to you and we went to your board and the Patterson Foundation, and I said, would you be willing to kick off the first capital campaign for phase one? We pulled a number out of the air, 20 million. At the time, we thought we might be able to do it for 20 million. It ended up costing 25 million. And I mean, graciously and gratefully, you decided to lead and come on board again. You really should describe that. But that was critical because, again, as soon as you came on board, all the other foundations came on board for round two. Many of the same philanthropists came on board and new ones. And we started building this business partner program, which many people in this town told me, forget about that. That's not going to work. But we've built it slowly but surely. We now have over 110, business partners. And we started building our Friends program. And I think we have well over 2,000 friends now. We should have 10,000, but we have 2,000. No. But we started building the pyramid that you have to build, right, for a robust, sustainable, private philanthropy supported, in part, right, effort. And I think it was incredibly powerful with the city and the county when we said, we'll fund the majority of it, and it ended up being 87% to be precise. And the other one that knocked their socks off is we said we will fund it with cash. In other words, we will not borrow. We will not ask you to borrow, okay? And we won't start until we have, I can't remember whether we said 70 or 80% of the cash, but we had to have a certain amount of the cash in hand, and we had to have some line of sight to being able to, attract and collect the rest of it.
I want to take a moment to give our viewers and listeners a little glimpse into the other foundations all came on board. We are beautifully, thoughtfully philanthropy rich in our community. And every single institutional foundation has a different mission. What was beautiful about, again...
We're the Bay Park Conservancy.
Now we're the Conservancy.
Yeah,
okay.
We're now the Bay Park Conservancy.
But the BPC now. Each one of those foundations came to the table for their own reason.
That's true.
But it came together because of the multifaceted, some were in the environment, some were in the experience, some were in the beautiful part of this mosaic is that each foundation found they had to participate because it aligned with their mission too.
That's true.
So, and foundations really are just institutional donors because every donor signs up for a reason that is rich for that meets their values.
Exactly.
So I want to kind of exhaust the money challenges.
Yes.
So the Patterson Foundation did do a substantial first match, downstroke of $2 million. Every time you raised $5 million, we'd give you $1 million for another. But then we did it again.
That's correct.
All right. So why did we do it twice from your perspective?
I would say from my perspective, the second time that I came to you and we came to your board, I wanted to get ahead of the funding game. We had always been playing catch up. We need $2 million to do the work that we need to do, attract the talent that we need to attract, frankly, go through the process of finding Sasaki and agency and the entire team we put together. We needed that. And we were literally running month to month. How much money do we have? How much can we do, right? And it wasn't month to month because we were so small the first 2 or 3 years, as you may recall. I mean, there were 3 of us. Right? And we got a lot of work done through working groups and teams and volunteers and consultants who made different arrangements to help us get through different pieces and parts of the work. But I wanted to get ahead on the funding side. And I believe we agreed on another 20 to 25 million. I believe we set the goal at 24 million. I believe it was every time we raised 5, Patterson Foundation would come on board with another one, and it worked. And I think the other reason that I came to you at that time is we'd been through 2 years of COVID. Wasn't an easy time to raise money. We were in a period when the economy was actually pretty good. And it was the old, strike while the iron's hot. And I just felt like it might be the right time. And I felt like, once again, if you were willing to do it, you were definitely the right partner.
I'd like to talk about every donor has expectations and why they do it. In the Patterson Foundation's case, the two challenges, we were at over $9 million of unrestricted money. That
Incredibly
is,
important.
well, and it's actually kind of unheard of. So as you think about, again, leading this whole big from gas liquid into solid, what was the value of the unrestricted bravery? Why was that important?
Hugely valuable because it gives you optionality. And while the touch points, the aspiration, one park for all, I think that was incredibly important, and I hope we will come back to it. It sets us apart. It sets us apart. The guiding principles. And then once we had agreement to a master plan, I mean, we've treated that master plan like that's the map of the future. That's the layout of the future. We'll adapt it. We'll be flexible with it. We'll improve it. But that's the kind of North Star for us, right? That's where we're going. That's Candyland, okay? If I use the kids' game analogy. So I think it was incredibly important to have that master plan in front of us, and I think it was inspiring. I think for philanthropists, they could look at that future land and they could go, there is an opportunity for environment and resilience and sustainability and water quality. Oh my goodness, there's an incredible opportunity for health and fitness and recreation. Oh my goodness, what a palette for introducing people in the community who don't have the means or will ever have the chance to get connected with arts and culture. I mean, my goodness, we had the ballet there on Saturday. We had the Yitzhak Perlman violinists on Sunday. We're going to have the opera in 2 weeks. The symphony plays there. The West Coast Black Theater has done several performances there. The Hermitage has done performances there. Oslo's done Shakespeare there, right? When they can see what's coming and they can see themselves and their interests and their passions and their commitments being part of that, that's when people get inspired. I'll say one last thing. Our single best selling point is the park. If we want to introduce a donor and get them excited about what we do, we have to get them into the park. And then if we can get them into the park for an hour walk and one program, the probability of, now they may say, not my interest, I'm interested in something else, but at least I understand what the offering is, right? But lots of times they'll come on board and they'll go, oh my goodness, I thought this was just, kind of a park, your average public park. And I don't want to put down average public parks. I grew up in average public parks and played on average school playgrounds, and that was my life, and it was a wonderful life, okay? But we aspired to be a public park and more, a lot more.
I'm gonna detour to just kind of talk about the Patterson Foundation's investment and our why. And one of the things we're celebrating right now is the Patterson Foundation has recognized that you have matured as an entity from air to solid, and you've actually graduated, and you're one of the crown jewels in the cultural, environmental, educational crown of excellence in our community. I'm going to give our viewers and our listeners a glimpse. During that time when TPF was offering its matches, many of the major institutions were saying, oh heavens, you're funding an organization, we would like a turn. And we would explain to them, well, this is unique in this way because for many reasons. Number one, you weren't a fully formed entity with a full staff and a track record. And so it was our informed risk that we wanted to do it. It was something for all people. It was free. Everybody could access at any time. But over the brief time period, really, 10 years is brief for any organization, you have demonstrated accountability, exceeding expectations, public-private partnership excellence. There is an iconic park that's percolating every day, far beyond expectations. So the Patterson Foundation said, hello, we have invested $9 million of catalytic funding. We would love to give you now a $1 million capping, congratulations, unrestricted gift, and we're putting a bow on it. So while we care deeply about the Bay, you have now graduated to be with the other big major forces in town. So while that might not be your desire, I think it's a pride point for the Bay to have this kind of an investment that we catalyzed, but boy, have you taken advantage of it and done incredible things with it. So I'd love you to comment now, looking forward. Give the viewers and the listeners just a glimpse on, you touched a little bit about the experiences, but what are some of your aspirations for the Bay Park going forward?
First of all, we're very grateful that we've hit a bit of a tipping point. Secondly, it's good to be a graduate. Thirdly, I'm not sure whether we're really ready to be included among the crown jewels, but that's our aspiration.
Yes.
It's our aspiration. And we're a very different kind of jewel in the crown, and we're proud of that. I do want to talk about the future, but I want to say how much we've been amazed, gobsmacked by what's happened over the last 3 years.
Good,
all right?
good.
Because that tells us where we're headed, right?
Beautiful,
okay.
Yes.
So we opened in October of 2022, right? We are 2.5 years later. And over 770,000 visits have been made to the park.
That number?
770,000.
Okay.
Last year, over 316,000 park guests. Not park guests, but visits from park guests were made to the park. We didn't really have a goal, but I will bet you if you asked that planning committee or asked the few of us that were at the Bay Park Conservancy, we would have been super happy with 50,000. And honestly, it created a whole bunch of challenges because when that many people show up, puts way more pressure on your everyday maintenance. And our aspiration is to be as clean and safe and well-maintained every day as we were on opening day. And knock on wood, most of the time we're able to do it. It meant we had to invest more in landscape technicians and their training. And we have 7-day-a-week coverage. No county or city park can afford 7-day-a-week coverage. We pay a small premium for that. It's worth every penny. So it's just been amazing. The other thing that's been amazing, and I think it's amazingly strategically important, and we just talked to the board about this again, open and accessible, in my view, are Jacks or better in the world today. You know, if you're not open and accessible, you're not part of the community, okay? Free was a big bet. It was like the bet that we're going to fund phase 1 from philanthropy. And we're going to fund it on a cash basis. But I believe so deeply in it. Diana and I and others, we track the top 10 or 20 parks in America religiously. We've been to almost all of them. We've interacted with their Park Conservancy management. And I'm talking from Central Park to Forest Park Forever to Piedmont Park to the Cincinnati Park System, which is always rated in the top 5 or 10 in America. to, I'm going to leave out some of the great parks, but the great parks in America. And we are the only one that offers all of its programming for free. If you want to go to a yoga class in Central Park, you're going to pay $20 to $25. If you want to go on a guided nature tour, you're going to pay $20 to $30. Okay. Now the city and county are charging $5 and $10. If you want to bring your kids to the Easter egg hunt, you pay a fee. And I understand the logic of how they get there. Mm-hmm. The public is demanding more service, more amenities, more experiences, more programs in our park. We have to add staff, et cetera. You can easily talk
it's a business model.
You can talk your way into, of course, if we're providing more, they have to pay for more. And it's been again, that forced us to think really hard about our business model. And one of the 6 guiding principles is we partner. We're built on partnerships, and it started with that public-private partnership with the city, which we extended to the county. But we have over 100 partners. All of that design, implementation, planning, engineering, construction is partnered. Virtually every one of the programs that we do is partnered. We don't do any program ourselves. So Southwest YMCA provides our Healthy and Fit program. Our trainers and teachers, all of our music that we present on site, and we present a lot of music in a lot of different ways. They're all partnered bands and groups and providers. All of our environmental and nature walks, it's partnered. So we couldn't have pulled off the opera without the partnership of Sarasota Opera. We couldn't pull off Shakespeare in the Park without the partnership of Oslo Rep. So if you have partners that share the vision, that believe that if they can provide a service for free, or in some cases sponsored, which comes back to philanthropy, right? We have a philanthropist right now who's funding virtually all of our cinema program, which is Thursday nights every week, Friday once a month for families. It's not an insignificant amount. We have somebody that underwrote the production of the 3 operas for the park. But my point is, this guiding principle partnership has enabled us to offer free, which sets us apart from virtually any other public park in the world. And here's the thing. That's a big part of us being welcoming. Mm-hmm. That plus our partners are the face of the park. When you come to the park, our team is the face of the park. And if they're all happy, they're all doing what they want to do in the way that they want to do it, then your experience, every person you touch in addition to every place you touch in the park, is happy.
You are embodying 2 of the Patterson Foundation's questions that we continuously ask. Who else cares and what's possible? Mm-hmm. And that's what partnering really allows to emerge.
What does the future hold for the park, and what does the future hold for the Bay Park Conservancy? For the park, we are always working on 2 vectors. One vector is building more park for all. Phase 2 is well underway. It consists of 3 major projects that will add 15 to 16 acres to the 10 acres or so that we have. So by the end of 2026, less than 2 years from now, we will have about half the park completed. Phase 2 consists of putting a front on the park. The front of our park that faces the city is actually along North Tamiami Trail. We haven't addressed that yet. We will address it. It will be tree-lined. It will be landscaped. It will look like a green oasis. It will have a beautiful promenade, tree-lined. This year, and then next year it'll have a new town square, and virtually all of the architecturally, culturally, and historically significant buildings on the site will have been rehabilitated, renovated, and repurposed and become part and parcel of the park, and that's super important. And if we finish that, which we intend to do and have committed to the city that we will do, we will roll into phase 3 in 2027, which I think is another 2 to 3 years worth of work. And then we're sort of going to wait for the finishing piece. But we can get this park done in 8 years, I believe, 8 more years. And that'll be terrific, right? The second thing we're working on is continuing to expand the mix of uses that you can sort of take advantage of in a self-directed way, and continue to extend our program to broaden our appeal and, frankly, to meet some community needs that we haven't met yet. I mean, I could take you through all the parts and pieces. We talked about some of the arts and culture, but we've added Pilates to yoga. We've 2 cardiologists did a 4-part health and nutrition program. We have environmentalists come in and talk about not just the health of the land and the water that's in the park, but the health of Sarasota Bay, the health of the Gulf, resilience, coastal resilience in a broader sense. So we'll keep expanding what the park we currently operate has to offer, and we will keep building new park.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this iconic work in progress is going to be the best on the globe, all right, because of the intentionality of values driven, always exceeding expectations. You only go for A pluses, and our region is indebted to UAG Lafley, the board, the donors, the public-private partnership. There are a whole bunch of people who own this park, and we are forever grateful in that complexity of success. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Just one, you hit the nail on the head at the end. Everyone who touches the park is an owner of the park. And when you achieve that, when they feel like it's their park, when they talk about it to their family and friends about my park or our park, that's when you know you're getting there.
It has been an honor to be a thought partner and investor in the park, and we look forward to all the incredible things ahead. So, A.G. Lafley, thank you for being with us for Beyond the Block today.
Thank you, Debra. My pleasure.